I was originally going to call this video "Check Out These Hot New Buns," so if anything, this is me showing restraint. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Traben. These are my tomes, and today we're going to check out a couple of the newest comics from Cullen Bunn. If you're not familiar with Cullen Bunn, he is a comic book writer, probably best known for his horror series. So there was Sixth Gun, which I've read, which is a Wild West story full of very creepy imagery, magic, and mystical artifacts, including the titular Sixth Gun. This ran for a number of years and has been collected in multiple editions. I really would like to go back and pick these up because I was enjoying what I had read so far. And I want to say I was 20 something issues into that one when I finally dropped off of it. He's also written Harrow County, another horror comic book, which I recently learned has a board game attached to it. So that might be another fun thing to do in the future, is go back and read through Harrow County and then play the board game. It's safe to say that Bunn's primary genre, or what he's best known for, is the work in horror. However, at least one of the titles I'm looking at today seems more decidedly fantasy. The Autumn Kingdom, with this iconography of swords and maidens, that type of thing, feels more like it's going to be a medieval fantasy story. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing what he does in that realm, in that space, and finding out if there's still a bit of a horror element to it. The other title, Ripcord, seems a lot more obviously horror or suspense coded, with this very striking red cover. Wolves, I think, are going to play a predominant role in this one. I flipped through the first issue, and I know that I think the wolves come in at the very end, but I don't know the context for this yet. I have the first 4 volumes of the Autumn Kingdom and the first 3 of Ripcord, so we're going to take a look at each, starting with Autumn Kingdom, and give you my thoughts. I'll be back in just a minute. I sat and read the Autumn Kingdom and then almost immediately started Ripcord. And of the two, I think I would recommend Autumn Kingdom. It was the first one I read, so it's the first one I'm going to talk about. Autumn Kingdom is a dark fantasy. I don't think I would call it grimdark, but it definitely feels within Bunn's wheelhouse of having that kind of dark edge to it. I only wouldn't call it grimdark because I feel like there's a bit too much agency with the main characters, and while the world is dark fae, it's not completely hopeless because these two protagonists here, like I said, have a lot of agency. They have a lot of power in combating that dark world. So we follow sisters Summer and Winter as they go into the fairy world to rescue their father. I think I was toward the end of issue 3 or possibly at the end of issue 4 before it let me know that this is actually a sequel series. And I did notice the subtitle here. So this is The Autumn Kingdom, The Wraithborn Queen. However, I just thought maybe that's what it's called. But there is a prequel series or a series before this in the similar style to Cullen Bunn's recent Ghost Lore series. This is being released in sets of 4, which I've stated my opinions on that elsewhere. I don't really like having a trade paperback that's only 4 issues that's being charged the same price as some of these that have 6 or 7. I don't think reading the previous story is a requirement for jumping into this one. It does set the stakes very quickly, and it was something I was going to praise it for, but actually it's because this is the second set of issues telling the story. So again, we follow Summer and Winter. I felt like Summer had much more agency within the story. They're the ones who primarily wield this giant sword. They're the ones who are pushing the plot forward into the next series. I found Winter to mostly be in the background. She gets captured. Winter does have a major fight with one of the primary antagonists of this comic, but that fight is resolved off screen. And they do come together at the climax of the story, switching the sword back and forth, so it's clear that Winter is capable of fighting and capable of being active, but I found her a much more passive character overall than Summer. By the way, Summer, Winter, and they're going into the Autumn Kingdom, haha. Overall, I would recommend this title. I am very much interested in picking up the previous volume. In fact, as soon as I heard that this was a thing, I went and searched it up on Amazon. It's not available on Amazon, nor is it available at any Barnes & Noble within 100 miles of me, which is frustrating. But I think that is illustrative of the idea that this is not a comic that's getting a lot of buzz right now. It's not a comic that a lot of people are talking about, and I do really think that that's a shame. It reminded me rather of Helen of Windhorn, because as they are descending into the Fey world, Summer and Winter's story is being interspersed with a fiction story that their dad wrote, and then there are parts where characters from that story seemingly come to life and come to aid what's going on in the story. And even when that is shown to be something else, there seems to be some indication that the fantasy world has more influence on the real world than is initially implied. Like a dark fantasy Alice in Wonderland, where our pair of heroes goes down to rescue one of their parents. It's got a lot going for it. It's got that family angle. It's got the fantasy angle. It's got this interesting take on fiction versus reality. And I enjoyed every moment of reading this book. This is one I would definitely recommend picking up if you are at all a fan of Cullen Bunn's other work, or you are a fan of dark fantasy. Ripcord, in contrast, is one that I'm not as hot on. This is less a dark take on something more than a grindhouse kind of feel. If you know like what a grindhouse film is, these like really bad B movies that are intentionally exploitative. Ripcord has a lot going on that doesn't really seem to matter for the majority of the story that they're telling. So this is primarily a revenge story where a girl is searching through Australia for her missing sister, comes across a biker gang who are peddling this drug called Ripcord, and Ripcord essentially turns you into a zombie. That's one of the aspects that's kind of like pushed aside, although I think it's going to end up being the primary thrust of the narrative, and maybe go into a larger thing. After all, it is the title of the comic. But the revenge story is very much like girl power in a way that feels very cheap and undeserved in a way. Basically just a lot of fights where our protagonist finds herself in overwhelming odds and then, you know, picks up a weapon. She's got military training. She picks up a weapon, kills a bunch of people, moves on, and the cycle kind of repeats. We do make some progress in the search for her sister, but like I said, there's so much going on here. There is the grindhouse atmosphere, there is the search for the lost sister, and in the background we have this ripcord stuff where ripcord basically turns you into a fast zombie with another name, and that doesn't really begin to pay off until the end of what I had, which is volume 3. So overall for me, it doesn't really feel like the kind of work that I've seen from Cullen Bunn that I really enjoy, which is more on the like fantasy horror side. And there wasn't as much for me to grab on here that I was excited about. In a similar vein to Autumn Kingdom, I found out that this has a prequel issue. So there was a Ripcord number 0, which is like before Ripcord or something like that. I'll put it up on screen. And that I don't have. If you are a fan of that kind of old school grindhouse type film, you like over-the-top violence with a plot that hints at the supernatural without actually, like, you know, with its full chest expressing that, then you do well to pick this up. It just wasn't for me. And that's my look at the random Cullen Bunn comics I picked up recently. Let me know down in the comments below if you've read any Cullen Bunn works. If you've read any horror or dark fantasy works, let me know. I'm really getting into that right now, especially the dark fantasy. As always, I hope your reading journey is going well. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so we can grow this corner of our BookTube community. And until the next one, take care.